Shock Monkey Radio is entertainment for adults, by adults, and the views and opinions expressed here do not reflect upon the sponsors or the FXBG Public Radio. For additional information, please refer to the United States Bill of Rights. Stand warned. Do vampires never have to poop? Now, I've read more Anne Rice books than I'd care to admit, but my understanding of vampires is that when they are turned, they have a phase where their body, quote-unquote, dies, and they poop and pee out all they have left in them. Maybe once again a few hours later. But if a vampire lives on blood, everything else should be considered waste, right? So when a vampire bites a mortal, they are bound to suck down a little bit of flesh or muscle tissue, and plus there could be human fat cells within the blood, especially if you're killing a fatter mortal. So my point is that after like 50 years of drinking blood and have a little bit of flesh, muscle, and fat here and there, shouldn't the vampire have to expel those waste products maybe once or twice a century? Wouldn't that make sense? Also, I wonder if vampires could become alcoholics or junkies. Say some vampires just hanging around a bar killing drunks. Could that happen? And if so, alcohol is not blood and therefore considered waste in a vampire body, so wouldn't that vampire piss pure alcohol? And wouldn't vampire turds smell like a rotting corpse? And could you possibly be a zombie and a ghost at the same time? Just a few thoughts that kept me awake last night. Welcome to Shock Monkey Radio. I am your host, the Madman. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to remind you that I have a Patreon. Go to patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio and become a patron. $3 a month, half a gallon of gas. I would appreciate it very much. Shock Monkey Radio is the cash tag if you want to send me money through Cash App. Hashtag Shock Monkey Radio, all one word. Please follow me on social media at Denalitsaw, DNALETSAW on Twitter. That's the word wasteland spelled backwards. Shock Monkey Radio Redux on Facebook and at SLRobbins13 on Instagram. I also have books available for digital download on Amazon.com. Search for the author Scott L. Robbins with 2 T's and 2 B's. Or you can follow the links down in the description below. So, did you have fun this weekend? Did you get some, this week, did you have some fun? Did you get some work done? You know, have a little relaxation? I'll tell you how I relaxed. I watched a couple of classic movies that I've seen a million times before, and I want to tell you about them because I love them so much, and if you haven't seen them or you haven't seen them lately, you should go see them. You should go watch them because I watched Big Trouble in Little China again. Hell of a good movie. Jack Burton is probably my favorite protagonist. I was thinking about this in the shower the other day, probably because I was thinking of Kim Cattrall. I was thinking about this in the shower about how Jack Burton's pickup line is so money. He comes up to her first time he sees her, comes up and walks over. Can I ask you a serious question? She goes, no. He goes, well, in that case, would you mind jumping right? What do you think about jumping right in the sack with some guy? You know? So I need to know, like, what if she had said okay or yes to that question? What would he say then? Or would it be the same response? Hell of a good pickup line. And then, you know, he kisses her after he thought they were drowning in the hell of the drowned men or whatever like that. And then he kisses her and he's like, oh, I'm just real excited to be alive. Oh, sure. And then like right after that, he's like, would you quit rubbing your body up against me because I can't concentrate? And what I love about Jack Burton is that it's a combination of both skill and luck. His entire character is both a combination of skill and luck. And it's like he said, it's all in the reflexes. So you can't deny that, you know, he killed Lopan. He caught the knife legitimately. You're a badass. You're a badass. But at the same time, he gets in that fight with those guys, and then he goes, is like, oh, I got to get my knife out. You know, okay, I'm all ready. He jumps around the corner going, ah! And, you know, his friend already beat up everybody. You know, and then they go to the meeting where Lopan and all his goons are, and he shoots into the air, hits the ceiling falls down, knocks him out, and he's out for that fight. So it's a combination of luck and skill that made Jack Burton one of my favorite characters in all of cinema. The other movie I saw is... You're not going to mention the elevator scene? The elevator? Which?
I feel pretty good.
Oh, yeah, they drink Egg Shen's drink, and they're all, yeah, I feel all right. It's like all their anxiety was gone. It's like, what'd you give him, Prozac?
Where's the Egg Shen energy drink?
I know, there should be. There should be an Egg Shen energy drink. I'm sure you get sued by, who's that, Fox? Fox made, yeah. 20th Century Fox. I also watched another movie that is really good, and I want to watch it with my niece because it's PG. and it's hilarious. It is gut-bustingly hilarious, and that is The Man Who Knew Too Little. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, it's amazing how hilarious they made a PG movie. Yeah, there's some, spy elements and people getting killed, but I mean, it's done very tastefully and not very gruesomely, and a bomb threat and stuff like that. But the whole story is based upon this Bill Murray character who works at a Blockbuster Video, Des Moines, Iowa. And he goes to London, England, and gets involved with this theater of life and a series of miscommunications and missteps and stuff like that. And it's funny because he's on this thing. He's supposed to be pretending to be an actor, in this scene. And so these muggers come up and they try to take his money. So he's like, wait, do it again. Do it again. I want to start over. It's like, I want to do the scene again. And these muggers are thinking, this guy's crazy. I don't even want his money. I'm out of here. And it's a series of things like that. Plus it has that what's her name? Joanne Whalley in it. You know who I'm talking about? WHA Joanne Whalley. She is friggin' gorgeous to this day. She was where I first noticed her was in the classic movie Willow, where she plays what's her name? What was her name? Sasha, or she had a really cool name in that movie. Let's look it up here. Pink Floyd. She was in Pink Floyd The Wall as groupie. Interesting. Let's see. I'm gonna find out where what was her character? Joanne Willow. What was that? 86. 86. Willow 88. Sorsha. Great name, Sorsha. Hot redhead, and Val Kilmer's character fell in love with her, and Val Kilmer really married her, which I think is okay. It's like, I don't mind losing out to Val Kilmer, but if you look at some of these pictures of Joanne Whalley, whoo, she is stunning. I think I have a thing for British chicks. What's that actor's name? Juno Temple? Do you know who I'm talking about? Yeah. Here we go. Juno Temple. I don't know. I just have a thing for British chicks. She was in No Time of Scandal, Atonement, The Other Bowling Girl, Three Musketeers in 2011, Dark Knight Rises, Magic, Maleficent, Black Mass. She is also gorgeous. I don't know. I got a thing for British chicks, British redheads in particular. Anyway, so great movies. I watched them. I enjoyed them this week, and I think you should check them out too, because they're excellent, excellent movies. Anyway, yeah. Do you think vampires have to worry about hypertension? Like if they're vampire gluttons, like they drink too much blood? Like, are there vampires who overeat?
That's them overeating is high blood pressure.
Yeah, so they overeat. They have to worry about getting high blood pressure. Anyway, I don't know. Just keep coming back to the vampires thing.
It's like a tick situation.
I don't know. I just keep coming back to it. My mind keeps wandering right back to the vampires. All right, the musical renaissance is over. I'm sorry to say. That's how I'm starting off this next segment here. The musical renaissance is over. And I know what you're thinking. He's going to spin this in some way just to talk shit about Kurt Cobain. Because Kurt Cobain does suck. We all know that. I know that. You know that. EK knows that. They're awful. But my point is that the musical renaissance is over. And I think that right around the time Kurt Cobain came out is when I said, okay, it's over. And let me explain what I mean about the entire history of music. Let's talk about a little musical history. All right. Skip back to like the 1940s. All right. 1940s, big bands were the thing. A bunch of, you got a brass section, you got a percussion section, you got strings, you got guitar. I mean, they're using like modern instruments and stuff like that, but it's all like Transylvania 65000. And that's what people did. They're in the speakeasies and the nightclubs of the era. That's what was playing. That was what was hot. In the before the big band era, because the big band era was from 1890 to like the 1940s. All right, there was a big band era where they had like tons of brass and stuff like that. But before that, you had more pastoral type music. That's the era in which like Mary Had a Little Lamb was the #1 charting song, or sold piece of sheet music, because that's how they what's the most popular song? It's like, well, we sold the most sheet music for this song. So that's the most popular song. They didn't have a Billboard Top 100 back then. And so a lot of that pastoral music had a lot of like that, what you find in like, what's that? We're not going to get our treasure because on account of our obstacles. Oh, brother, where art thou? It's that old timey type music. Is what you hear? It's like it commonly is like religious themes. There's a lot of church imagery in the popular music of that era, and so that's what music was like. It was pastoral, and it was mostly local musicians. When you heard music, you go to your church or you go to your local hoedown or whatever people had. It's like the barn dance or whatever, and it'd be a local band. It'd be local musicians, people you knew in your town who are playing the song. And it doesn't. Sometimes you get a good musician, but a lot of times they're just it's just something they kind of know how to do. And so you may have this hoedown in Spedunkadoo, Indiana, or whatever like that, and you have 4 people who are actually musicians in town, and they all suck, and so they play the same 4 songs over and over again, and that's what it was like. That's what music was like. And before that, into the 16th and 17th centuries, 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, music was all like what we consider classical now. Classical music, which is orchestral. Frequently, you'd have like solo pieces of music based upon one instrument and stuff like that. Vocals were usually reserved for the opera and things like that. And so, and so it was all. That's why, like Wolfgang Mozart, he was the hot rock star of his era. But the music he was making, it still holds up to this day. Don't get me wrong; the music of that era still holds up to this day. It's excellently composed music. But it was a different time. Considering the past of what they had before that, because before orchestral music, it was like quartets and stuff like that, musicians who work together and stuff like that, and then even a little beyond that, it's just banging on logs. You know what I'm saying? And so it's when you really don't understand like the history of music, you can't really fully appreciate what happened to music in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. All right. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s was the birth of rock and roll. It was the birth of rhythm and blues. It was the birth of the American genre of music in many ways. And you can sit there and argue it's more of like a Western concept and say, yeah, a lot of because it's raining all the time in Britain, you got the British invasion, you got tons of Brits selling albums in the United States. But in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there was so much good music being made in that era that I think it was truly a musical renaissance, because I still listen. I don't know if you listen to music from that era, from 50s to 70s. It's just the best music that's ever been composed in many ways. And a lot of people don't really understand that in comparison. It's like, how could you compare it? Like, people who are like technically proficient in music, they'll sit there and say, oh, Mozart is way better than, than Chicago. But 25 or 6 to 4 is a jam. You know what I'm saying? And I could jam to that easier than I can to, any of Mozart's stuff, any of Beethoven's stuff. All right. So I think that there was a real renaissance of music that happened when we started introducing electricity into music. And the people who were creating music in that era, really were able to harness it from everyone from, Queen's no synthesizers to Jimi Hendrix. You know what I'm saying? It's like they took advantage of this new technology and they created beautiful, amazing music with it. And then the 80s happened. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the music of the 80s because it's still way better, holds up way better as music over time. And it's still part of the musical renaissance, if you ask me. However, it got more bubblegummy, it got more glam rock, it got more visual because of, music videos. And it's like, with the Buggles, it's like video killed the radio star in many ways. It's like, you think Freddie Mercury with those teeth would be, selling records today, be a pop star today? No, it'd be a different story. And so that kind of had an effect on music and started making music worse. All right. And then the 90s came. The 90s came, and uh, in a rebellion against the glam rock, Poison Kicks, 80s. They became this counterculture of that, which is this dirty, grungy, disgusting, awful music. And they had all that, and that became the cool thing. And I remember in the 90s saying, I think the musical renaissance is over, because music ever since the 90s, I mean, there were some good tunes in the 90s, don't get me wrong. It was a bittersweet symphony, the final the final bit of the musical renaissance was a bittersweet symphony. And so and music today, it's so awful by comparison. Don't get me wrong, there are people who are still making music. There are. And I think they know who they are. But what I'm saying is that pop music today is just such crap compared to, I know I sound like just an old man or whatever, but pop music today is just such crap in comparison to the Renaissance, the 50s to the 70s in music. Anyway, I was thinking about this the other day about how, it's like, I wonder if we may have another Renaissance at some point, or if there's going to be some other new technology that may come about, and then we'll have another renaissance because of that new technology that we can apply to musical instruments, like electricity. But I mean, electricity had a positive impact on music in the 50s to the 70s, and I can arguably say that music videos, the visual element, really detracted from it, and that's why you get people like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. It's like, it's not necessarily great music. It's mostly just a dance pop show, and that's not, it's not focusing on the music, Anyway, it's just a little thing I wanted to mention. I mean, you'd think that vampires could suffer a stroke. I mean, are those older vampires? I mean, wouldn't there be like older vampires with like half their face paralyzed? I mean, where does the blood go when they drink it? Where does it go? Anyway, I want to talk about officers and college education. Okay, and I group that together: officers / college education. I group it together because when I was in the Navy, I had this joke that I would say quite often. And that joke was, what's the difference between an E1 and an O1? And the answer is, an E1 will eventually stop wandering around the ship asking stupid questions. And if you don't get it, maybe you weren't in the military. But in the military, officers are usually college educated. There are people who can go through limited duty officer like programs and stuff like that, or warrant officers who don't necessarily have to go to college. However, it is strongly encouraged that they do. And so in the military, you kind of have to have a degree to be an officer. I didn't have a degree, so I came in as enlisted. And there's even like things like when if you have like 2 years of college, if you have like an associate's degree, and you go and enlist in the Navy, you'll come in start out as like an E3 or E4 because of your education. And that's fine. That's fine. I think education is a good thing, and I think all people should do it. However, or get an education in some way, shape, or form. But I don't necessarily think that colleges or universities in this modern era are the way in which people become educated. Now, I always had a problem with officers. I always considered it a class warfare thing between enlisted and officers because of their education. Because I met some real bonehead officers. And you know what? Real boneheaded college-educated people. It doesn't really matter if you're in the military or not. College-educated idiots. And that's what I see more and more coming out of colleges and universities. And so, in the military, it was like you salute the rank, not the man. And so I'm saluting the rank. It's not that idiot that I'm saluting. It's his rank. And so, I'll play the game that way, but in my private moments, on my little blog, on my webpage and stuff like that, I would sit there and talk trash about officers. That, a college education doesn't necessarily provide you with intelligence, doesn't necessarily provide you with the capability of leadership, okay? Because these things matter. These things matter, especially in places like the military. But even in the civilian world, somebody who has a college education doesn't necessarily make them a good leader, doesn't necessarily mean that they are qualified. People cheat in college all the time. You know, not everyone gets straight A's in college. In fact, if they didn't get straight A's in college, that's probably why they ended up joining the military. Okay? Not to say that there aren't people who got straight A's in college and didn't join the military. I know there were. All right? And I'm not saying that like all officers aren't deserving of their rank. And all those college-educated people in the civilian world, they aren't qualified to do that job. What I'm saying is that there's not having a degree does not make you intelligent. It doesn't make you a leader. And it doesn't make you an expert in anything. Because, you know, we're all kind of just idiots. And I had to educate myself. You know, I don't have a college degree. And so you're just thinking, oh, well, you know, what the hell do you think? What does it matter what you think? You know? But the point is that, you know, higher education is a joke these days. And I don't think that you know, you could take leadership classes, I guess, in college, but that doesn't really make you a leader. And that's something I learned in the military. It's something that you naturally are. And when I was a seaman, E3, there were people who were higher ranking than me that were coming to me asking for my expertise because I was really good at computers, working on computers and system administration and all that. There are people higher ranked than me coming to me for my expertise. And I'm not saying that they didn't deserve their rank, because they did. They did deserve the rank because usually they had been in longer than me. That makes sense. However, you cannot assume that somebody is dumb just because of like whatever rank is on their sleeve or their position, and you cannot assume they're smart because of the rank on their sleeve or their position. We had these guys in boot camp called nukes. And nukes were usually guys who they scored really high on the ASVAB, you know, high 90s kind of guys. They wanted me to take the nuke test. I was like, no, because it's like a 6-year enlistment for nukes. And nukes, they always made fun of nukes in boot camp because nukes would always overthink things. We had this one nuke in my boot camp, and what nuke means is that they're guys who are trained to work on like nuclear reactors and stuff like that the military has. That's what they're training to be. But we had this one guy, he could not get lacing of his boots down. He could not get it. It was supposed to be right over left, you know, every single one, right over left. And that's how detailed, all right, to the military is. And this guy couldn't get it. It was always left over right. And so I remember the section leader, because I was a section leader, the section leader of his section, he was complaining to me. He's like, I cannot understand. This guy is super smart. He aces every single test we get. He scored like 98 on the ASVAB. And he still can't figure out how to lace his shoes correctly. And that's kind of the point. It's like natural intelligence doesn't necessarily mean you're good at lacing your shoes, tying up your own shoes, or taking care of yourself. And you'd frequently find like even these smart guys, you know, these guys who are really intelligent were also like real shitbirds in another way. It's like they never didn't iron their shirts and stuff like that. And, you know, they didn't present themselves as military men. You know, they're still just nerds playing the part. You know, and so the joke in boot camp was don't nuke it out. Don't think too hard about it, you know, and so forth. Don't nuke it out. And so, I mean, there's all sorts of different qualifications for a position. And so when I think, especially in the military and in some degree in the civilian world, I think that, you know, having a college degree doesn't necessarily make anyone better or smarter or a better leader or anything like that. And so it just irritated me throughout my life, throughout my career. I've run up against people who had a rank or had some position of authority over me, and I thought that they did not deserve it because they were unqualified. And obviously that has caused me to get fired from a few jobs. But I mean, I think there needs to be some sort of, you know, reasonableness when it comes to a guy who's like going and leading a group of like, 30 guys, 30 infantry into combat is somehow more qualified than the NCO, the non-commissioned officer, the sergeant that's been in for like 10 years, you know, actually has combat medals. I think that he would be more qualified to lead a group than just some jackass straight out of West Point. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I always brought up Starship Troopers when I was in the military. You know, lieutenant, the officer ranks, it's just what happens after you get beyond when you reach the top of the enlisted ranks. It's like, I don't think if you spend 20 years in the military and like 15 years, you get Master Chief, you know, which is pretty fast. If you get Master Chief and then for 5 years you can't advance at all unless you go to LDO status or become a warrant officer and stuff like that. I think that experience at your particular job makes you more qualified. Spending 4 years in college, even if it is West Point, doesn't necessarily make you qualified to lead a military platoon. Anyway, just me ranting about that. I don't know what I'm mad about. And, you know, what about AIDS and other bloodborne diseases? Do you think that vampires catch the HIV? I mean, but it doesn't really do anything to them because they're immune to everything else. Or maybe they use AIDS as a way to fake their deaths and get out of the limelight. Maybe that's what happened to Freddie Mercury. Maybe Freddie is still singing and strutting around some vampire nightclub as we speak. That would be cool. But honestly, I think it's more likely that vampires would gravitate towards healthcare and the healthcare fields. Hi, I'm Dr. Acula, head of the night shift. Just here, I need to collect some more blood samples. Oh, I bet that's how it works. That way the vampires can make sure they're getting clean blood and not risk diseases. You know, and I bet the vampires run the blood banks too. And yeah, they ship blood out to hospitals and disaster areas, and it saves many lives. More lives means more mortals to give blood. So maybe there are vampire scientists that figured out what they really need to eat are the platelets. So that's why they pay to harvest those platelets sometimes. Do you think there are vampire chefs? Welcome back to Cooking with Blood. I'm Lestat, and today we're making blood bacon. Don't ask me how they do it, but cooking is science. And maybe vampires figured it out, and blood bacon is as common to vampires as salt and vinegar chips are to us. I wonder if blood types are like wine for vampires. Oh, Louis, a bottle of AB negative? You shouldn't have. Everyone else brought O negative. I'll open this one first, but you know me, I'm happy with just B positive. But I wonder if they would prefer more fresh blood as opposed to aged wine blood. I mean, wouldn't that make more sense? And what about adulterants? I mean, could someone spike the blood with DMT or something and blow the minds of every vampire at the vampire party? Do vampires really party? I'm sure you've seen plenty of that stuff in movies, but even humans get sick of clubbing in their 30s. You really think a 50-year-old vampire who looks 20 forever wants to party all night in a nightclub for all eternity? Killing people in club bathrooms instead of having sex with them? Killing people in the club bathrooms while people have sex and do coke in the stall next to you? You think after 50 years that might get old? My point is I guess vampires don't make sense. I do wonder about the stake through the heart thing. Silver and crucifixes hurting vampires makes sense, but a stake through the heart? I mean, but I promise you, there was an argument by two guys saying, can you say for sure that stake through the heart will kill a vampire? And the other answers, it'd stop everything else, so why do you think it wouldn't kill a vampire? So now everyone who fears or confronts a vampire has to carry sharpened sticks for some reason. Anyway, enough about vampires. Let's go ahead and get into the news worth knowing. Wet my whistle. You can't hit that stinger for me? News worth knowing. Okay, Mayorkas claims southern border is secure as historic migrant crisis rages. So Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on Tuesday claimed that the southern border is secure, even as Border Patrol agents are facing historic migrant numbers. Mayorkas spoke at the Aspen Security Forum, way far away from the border, where he was asked about the situation on the southern border, which has seen more than 200,000 migrant encounters per month, for the last 4 months. Wow. But even though he acknowledged the situation is a historic challenge, the secretary claimed the border is secure. Look, the border is secure, he said. We are working to make the border more secure. That has been a historic challenge. He also used the question to take aim at lawmakers who have said that they will not pass comprehensive immigration legislation. A number of Republicans have said that they would not consider legislation that includes a pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants already in the country until the border crisis ends. I have said, this is a quote, I have said to a number of legislators who expressed to me that we need to address the challenge at the border before they pass legislation, and I take issue with the math of holding the solution hostage until the problem is resolved, he said. There's work to be done, he said, before clarifying that safe and secure are two different words. There are smugglers that operate on the Mexican side of the border, and placing one's life in their hands is not safe, he said. All right, and then it gives a bunch of numbers about them, but I'm not going to read those to you. But, yeah, this guy needs to be fired, right? And so 200,000 migrants a month. And they're like, Democrats, they're like, well, we should just give them a pathway to citizenship. And I have to say this, no. Take them to the border and tell them to come in and ring the doorbell correctly. You know what I'm saying? I still knock and ring on my friends, doors. Hit the button, say, hey, I'm here. I'm not going to just walk into your house like I own the place. You go outside and you ring the doorbell like a proper guest. I understand that you want to come here. I understand that this is the best nation on earth. I get it. And you are welcome to come in legally. Legally. And the reason why we want you to do it legally is so that these coyotes who smuggle people across the border, they don't make money off of you, and you don't have those people. You are trying to get across the border, and you don't have to deal with criminals in order to get in the United States. Deal with the law, the lawful way to get into the country. And this guy's an idiot, Mayorkas. He's an idiot because he thinks we're secure. And we've been leaking like a sieve on the southern border for the entire Biden presidency. So I'm sorry. This guy should be fired, that we should definitely secure our border, and we should dump these people outside. Even these, I appreciate those people in like Texas and Arizona who are shipping people to D.C., shipping the migrants into D.C. I get what you're trying to do, but at the same time, it's like, why don't you just drive them to the border and kick them the hell out? Tell them to come back in and ring the doorbell like a proper guest. We need your paperwork. We need your taxes. You want to live here. We don't want you living under the radar. Sorry. I got in an accident one time with a guy. Couldn't speak a word of English. I asked him if he was okay. He looked at me blankly. I said, "Está bien?" "Sí." "Okay. No damage. No damage." I pointed at the card. "No damage. Catch you later." You think that guy wanted me to call the police? Think if I called the cops, he wouldn't have gotten out of there? I'm pretty sure he was an undocumented worker, undocumented immigrant. And so, that's the point. It's like, you are certainly welcome. I would invite the entire world to come and legally immigrate to the United States. It's not that you're not welcome. Come in like a proper guest. Treat us with respect, and we can treat you with respect. It's really quite simple. It's how all human relationships work. Anyway. Golly. All right, let's go to this next story. San Diego parents furious as schools return to mask mandates and remote classes. Can you believe this nonsense?
They're just doing it because the kids are ugly.
San Diego kids are ugly, EK says. That's the problem. It's like, oh, these kids are so damn ugly, I don't want to look at them. All right, so Let Them Breathe founder Sharon McKeeman slammed the San Diego school board president Wednesday after she suggested students uncomfortable with the renewed mask mandate should just not return to class and resume virtual learning instead. McKeeman demanded new leadership on Fox and Friends first, warning parents are outraged over her response and the policy reversal. This is what she said on Fox and Friends first. Parents are outraged and COVID is becoming less severe. The transmission that parents are really worried about are these mask mandates coming back and spreading. And I think that outrage was just stoked hearing what the San Diego board president said, that they're exiling unmasked students to Zoom school, which is a proven failure. Let Them Breathe is hard at work, helping parents to prevent their students' smiles from being stolen again. Ooh, that's a great way to put it. Helping parents prevent their students' smiles from being stolen again. We are pursuing legal action against San Diego Unified, but ultimately what is needed is new leadership. That's why parents like myself and Becca are running for school board this week, because we're tired. Well, good for you. All right. Tired of not being listened to, needs to be new leadership, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You're stealing the smiles of these children. Wow. That's a great way to put it. And you know why it's called COVID-19? Because it was 2019. That's 3 years ago. Let it go, people. You people who are holding on to this thing are just so sick in the mind. So sick in the mind. Go wash your hands again and quit bothering the rest of us. You want to wash your hands 800,000 times a day? That's your business, not mine. If you want to wear a mask because you're terrified of everything that's invisible in this world, it's not going to save you from God. Anyway, I can't believe that people are still trying to, like, oh, we got to mask up. Again. Go F yourself. All right, let's go to this next story. John Cleese says wokeness has a disastrous impact on comedy. So this just in. John Cleese is still alive. These British people, they live forever, unless they catch AIDS. Anyway, so entertainment icon John Cleese slammed wokeness for having a disastrous impact on comedy during an interview with Fox News Digital. Cleese was a keynote speaker at last week's Freedom Fest conference in Las Vegas, where he spoke about how to cultivate creativity, a skill he believes is essential and not just in showbiz, but sounded the alarm that political correctness has become a major obstacle, particularly for young comedians. When asked if comedians have the freedom to be funny in the year 2022, Cleese firmly responded, no. There's always been limitations of what we're allowed to say, Cleese said. Why you go to Moliere and Louis the 14th, Roman numerals. I mean, Moliere had to be a bit careful. And there will always be limitations. I mean, in England, until some ridiculous late date like 1965, all plays had to be submitted to what was used to be part of the palace called the Lord Chamberlain. And he would read it. There were hilarious letters used to go back and saying, you may only say F once. Or this sort of, and you cannot say bugger, but you can say this sort of ridiculous negotiating letters. Was as 1965. Wow. Quote, but I think there's a particularly worrying. It's particularly worrying at the moment because you can only create an atmosphere of freedom, where you're not checking everything you say critically before you move on. You have to be able to. What you have to be able to do is to build without knowing where you're going because you've never been there before. That is correct. That's what creativity is. You have to be allowed to build. And a lot of comedians now are sitting there, and when they think of something and they say something, can I get away with it? I don't think so. So and so got into trouble, and he said that, and she said that. You see what I mean? Not really. And that's the death of creativity. I agree. Yeah. He continued. So I would say at the moment, this is a difficult time, particularly for young comedians. But you see, my audience is much older, and they're simply not interested in most of the woke attitudes. I mean, they just think that you should try to be kind to people, and there's no need to complicate it, you know. A Monty Python star explained that wokeness allows the critical mind to take over the creative, saying they're definitely in opposition to each other. You can do the creation and then criticize it, but you can't do them at the same time. So if you're worried about offending people and constantly thinking of that, you're not going to be very creative. So I think it has a disastrous effect. And this quote is what made me want to pick this article for today, is because you cannot do you could do creation, you can create something, and then you can criticize it. And that's true. And as far back as I can remember writing poetry or prose or anything like that, I write it up and it's like, oh, that's probably the worst poem I've ever written. You know, but while I'm writing it, I'm just thinking about the poem. I'm not thinking about, it was like, who's, when I made that, I made a comment about Tweedledee and Tweedledum being gay. It was like, oh, it's going to piss people off. And that happened to me. That happened to me in Lit Mag in high school. I had this poem where I mentioned that Tweedledee and Tweedledum are lovers and not brothers. And, you know, I kind of got some pushback on it. So I don't know if we should print that in the literary magazine because it's discussing gay stuff. And I was like, it's a literary magazine, you know, it's supposed to be creative. And that's the point. It's like, that's why I love this quote. You know, you can do the creation and then criticize it, but you can't do them both at the same time. And that's very, very true. And John Cleese, the comedy legend. Have you ever seen A Fish Called Wanda? That is a gut buster. Don't call me stupid. Don't call me Otto. You call me, oh no. Great flick, A Fish Called Wanda. And John Cleese, I mean, even before that, you know, in the Monty Python days, is like classic stuff. And if you think back to Life of Brian, they had this character who wanted to be called Loretta. He wanted to be a woman, a guy who wanted to be a woman, and he wanted to have babies. And John Cleese's character sitting there explaining, it's like, where's the fetus going to gestate? You don't have eggs. You don't have a uterus. You know, it's not possible. Why are we even having this conversation? Because they all took a vote on it and they decided to talk about it. That's how it happened. All right. Watch that movie, Life of Brian. Fantastic movie. But my point is that, you know, when it comes to creating, you know, and you cannot, that's why you end up with these comedians that go out there and they go get the clapter. You know, they go out and say, they'll come out on stage like, hey, I'm a comedian. Hey, abortion. That sucks, huh? You know, comedians come out and do that, and or no, it's more like, it's like, hey, they outlawed Roe versus Wade. You know, that sucks, huh? And everyone's like, woo! Because, you know, what is funny is apparently supporting abortion. I don't know. And that's why you get these comedians and, you know, frequently female comedians that just come out there and you know, Janine Garofalo it. You know what I'm saying? They just all political rant and stuff like that. And you're supposed to, is this supposed to be funny? You know? I mean, it's okay to use politics in humor, but, you know, it shouldn't be partisan. You know what I mean? You can't say it's like, I want only Democrats to get this joke, or I want only Republicans to get this joke. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And John Cleese is right. When you're creating something, you cannot be critical of it at the same time. You can be critical of it afterwards. You know, if somebody came up to me and say, hey, I think your book, The Bunny Years, sucks ass. And I was like, yeah, it's probably not great. But, you know, Raving Seven Batman is probably worse by comparison. You know, if you just talk about spelling errors and meandering thoughts and so forth. And but hey, that's why I wanted to talk about this article, because John Cleese still dropping wisdom on us. All right, let's talk about this one. Ocasio-Cortez and Omar pretend to be handcuffed after arrest at protest and blows up on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen the pictures of this. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's hilarious. The images of Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York and Ilhan Omar from Minnesota seemingly pretended to be handcuffed on Tuesday as they're escorted away from the Supreme Court by police, and it drew amusement and ridicule on the right. Along with left-wing squad members like Representative Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts and several other House Democrats, Ocasio-Cortez and Omar joined an abortion rights protest outside the Supreme Court that blocked traffic, leading to Capitol Police taking her away. Video caught Ocasio-Cortez walking away with a policeman, holding her and other protesters' arms, smirking, with her hands behind her back in the typical handcuffs pose, yet she wasn't cuffed. At one point, she raised a fist to the crowd in solidarity. The handcuffs magically came off, and she raised up her fist, confirming that she wasn't constrained. Omar also could be seen in the video walking away from the protest with her hands behind her back in a handcuff pose, despite not wearing handcuffs. Ocasio-Cortez, a lightning rod for criticism on the right, predictably lit up Twitter when the image went viral yesterday afternoon, as critics mocked her for seemingly playing up the drama of her encounter with law enforcement. And then it has a bunch of comments from people like roasting her. You know, and remember I was talking about earlier with the how video killed the radio star? When, you know, electricity came into music, that's when you got that renaissance of the 1950s and 60s and 70s, where you got these beautiful sounds coming out of guitars now powered by electricity. Then the video came out, you know, and then it all became image based. And that's why you ended up with Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, mediocre musicians, who, all their success is based upon their look, and that's what Ocasio-Cortez is. That's what Ilhan Omar are. That's who they are. They are the music videos killing the radio star era. All of this is window dressing, putting arms behind your back and pretending like you're arrested to create that image, to create that buzz, to create that conversation. That is the problem. There's no substance to your music, Britney Spears. It's all a performance. You know what I mean? It's not good. It's not good politics. You're just performing. It's like her going and crying at that fence by a parking lot in a white suit. She's one of these Instagram babies. The only reason she wanted to get elected was to become famous. Because, that's what people like Ocasio-Cortez are like. They want to be, I think I'm beautiful and special and everyone should be looking at me like I'm a celebrity. But you're not. It's all just a game. It's all just window dressing. And I can't believe it. Has it been 2 years since she's been in office? Why haven't they voted her out? Because she is a moron. How much longer?
I said, has it only been 2 years? It feels like so much longer.
I don't know. But she is a mess. And the whole squad, they're just nonsense. All right, let's talk about a couple happier stories, depending upon your perspective, I suppose, before we get out of here. Missouri shopper shoots and kills armed robber holding knife to a clerk's neck. Excuse me. An unassuming customer I think he probably assumes something. Don't you think? An unassuming customer saved a gas station clerk's life Saturday morning in Missouri after a robbery suspect put a knife to the employee's neck. Lance Bush, 26, allegedly held the female clerk of the gas station at knife point while the customer, who was concealed carrying, sat in his car in the parking lot. After noticing the bizarre dynamic between the would-be robbery suspect and his hostage, the anonymous customer repeatedly asked if everything was okay. He grabbed a backpack and ran inside, looking, I guess, for the clerk. I saw him grab her and drag her to the front of the counter. Something wasn't right when I saw that, so me being concealed carry, I had my gun on me and I just waited. The customer added in a comment to the local outlet CBS News 19. The individual asked to remain anonymous. Smart move, guy. Quote, I walked up to the door and I saw him with a knife to her throat. She was emptying out the cash register, and I took a step in and peeked my head in to ask if everything was okay. You got some nuts, bro. I couldn't see his face, but he was saying yes. But I could see her face, and she was saying no, and she was scared, he continued. According to the gun owner's account of events, Bush then ran around the corner to attack before the customer fired approximately 4 shots, dropping him to the ground. Quote, taking somebody's life is not an everyday thing. Neither is saving someone's life, the customer told local outlets. The customer stayed at the scene until authorities arrived. Bush was taken to the hospital and pronounced dead. Police found that Bush's black SUV was a stolen vehicle from nearby Maryland Heights. The Quick Trip customer is only the latest in a string of high-profile. Okay, we'll talk about that on the other one later. Yeah, so I think this is a good story. All right, I know you think it's horrible because it does end up with a dead person. It really does. And it's like the guy said, killing somebody is not an everyday thing, and saving someone's life is not an everyday thing. But you did the same thing at the same time. You did both those things at the same time, and that's the point. It's like it is a bad thing that people have to die sometimes, but it's holding somebody up at knife point and robbing them. That's worse. You know what I mean? It's what's the phrase I'm thinking of? It's like sometimes we kill, but the real job is to save lives. And so that's why I love the Second Amendment. I love that people have concealed carry. And if I were that cashier in that situation, I would be incredibly thankful for a guy who could conceal carry. That guy gets free Slurpees all day long. You can come in, it's like every day, man, I'll give you one free Slurpee on me for the rest of your life. Because that guy who was there on the scene when it was happening, he was there. He was close enough to react and do something about it. Cops, that guy could have been long gone, and that cashier could have been long dead by the time the cops got there if somebody called the cops. Anyway, So I like these kinds of stories because, it's like they say, it's like, how do you stop a bad guy with a gun? With a good guy with a gun. All right. And sometimes that may mean us. May mean you. May mean you. It may mean me. So let's go to this next story. So Indiana police say the Good Samaritan took out the mall shooter in 15 seconds, landed 8 of 10 shots. So hopefully, if you've been keeping up the news, you heard about this shooting in a mall in Indiana. Indiana? Yeah. So police say it took Elijah Dickin just 15 seconds to neutralize a man who opened fire on shoppers at an Indiana mall. Quick action that they believe saved countless lives. Quote, the time lapse between the moment that Jonathan I'm not going to say the rest of his name. This Jonathan guy who exited the restroom and began shooting. And when he was shot by the civilian, it was only 15 seconds, not 2 minutes. Greenwood Police Chief James Eisen said in a statement on Tuesday. The surveillance video showed this guy exit the restroom at 5:56:48 p.m., and he was neutralized by Dickin at 5:57:03. Dang. Wow. The statement corrects the previous police timeline in which authorities said the incident lasted 2 minutes. Police also revealed that a preliminary autopsy report on a gunman showed that he was struck 8 times and died of his wounds, meaning Dickin only missed the shooter twice, despite engaging the threat from a distance. Does it say the range? Let's find out. Keep reading. Police say the gunman was armed with 2 rifles, a Glock pistol, and carrying at least 100 rounds of ammunition with him. He killed 3 people before being quickly neutralized by Dickin, who began closing the distance on the shooter as he waited for the bystanders to flee behind him. Yeah, but what was the range? Eisen said that Dickin's actions were heroic and very tactically sound, despite him having no police or military background. How about that? Quote, many more people would have died last night if not for a responsible armed citizen who took action within the first 2 minutes of the shooting, he said. Eisen said. Guy Relford, an attorney hired to represent Dickin, said he was proud of his client's actions at the mall. Quote, I am proud to serve as Eli Dickin's attorney and spokesperson, Redford said in a statement. He is a true American hero who saved countless lives during a horrific event that could have been much worse if not for Eli's courage, preparedness, and willingness to protect others. Why aren't they saying the range? That's what I want to know. How far away was he? 8 of 10. I could do it, I don't know, 25, maybe 50 yards. I can get 8 of 10 in the circle. You know what I'm saying? Plus, hitting a human is way easier than hitting a target. So I think, I could probably do 50, maybe 75. But that's good shooting. No police or military background. That's excellent shooting. And 15 seconds, that's one melee. If you know anything about Heroes Unlimited. One melee. 10 rounds in one melee. That means he fired a long burst. So it took all of his actions that melee. And he hit 8 out of 10. That's amazing. That's amazing. And engaged him within 15 seconds. Imagine that. 15 seconds. Pop, pop. You hear a couple shots. Maybe you see somebody getting shot, falling to the ground. How quickly you got to be getting up, pulling your concealed carry pistol. That is fast as hell. Hey, man, nice shooting. And like I said before, I know a lot of people on social media and stuff like that got all bent out of shape when people called this guy a good Samaritan and stuff like that. But you know what? That's the best friend in your life, for those people in that mall. Granted, 3 people got killed, but like they say, it's like countless lives could have been saved. And they countless because we won't know, because we only 3 people were killed. All because of this one guy, one good guy with a gun who's willing to stand up against some crazy person. And I think that we need to highlight news stories like this so to discourage all these crazy assholes who might go out there and try to do that. If you're sitting there, if you're the kind of guy who's sitting there in your basement cooking up some plan to go to a mall and start shooting people up, I want you terrified that there's probably some guy at a concealed carry permit in the food court who's going to mess up your entire plan within 15 seconds. Absolutely. God bless this Eli Dickin. God bless his training. I think I heard it on Michael Knowles' show today, that his grandfather taught him how to shoot. And that's how it should be done. That's how it should be done. I also heard that his girlfriend, the guy who shot the shooter, His girlfriend was a nurse, and she helped treat people on the scene. That is the point of the Second Amendment. And we should highlight these stories because I want everybody who might think that they want to go on some postal rampage. I want you terrified of the concealed carry guy who may be there. Absolutely. I want you to be terrified. It's the same thing with these people who like smash and grab in these stores. You know, if you have 50 people rushing into your CVS or whatever, and they're just grabbing shit off the shelves, you know, you don't have to kill all of them. You shoot one, and it probably won't ever happen again. All right? I'm sorry that, you know, we live in a violent and dangerous world, and sometimes people only respond to violence. I'm sorry. That's why corporal punishment has existed. That's why capital punishment exists. All right? That's how sometimes that's the only language some people understand. Anyway, this is going to be the end of the show. I want to remind you again to go over to Patreon over here. Patreon.com/shockmonkeyradio. Become a patron. I would appreciate that very much. If you want to send me money through Cash App, use the hashtag shockmonkeyradio, all one word. You can follow me on social media at Denal, which is the word wasteland backwards on Twitter. Shock Monkey Radio Redux on Facebook, and at SLRobbins13 on Instagram. I'll remind you I have books available for digital download. Follow the links down in the description below to find those and buy those and read them. I would appreciate it. Send me an email, madman@fxbgpr.com. Tell me if you like the books or not. I would appreciate it very much. So this has been Shock Monkey Radio. I'm the Madman, and I love you.